I've actually had so many kids tell me that I look like Anna over the past few weeks, and like, I'll take it. Does anyone remember when I actually did an entire reading wrap up in full Anna cosplay? I miss cosplay. We'll get back there eventually. Oh, conventions. Anyway, that's not at all what this video is about. Hey all, it's Starzy, and today I am going to be looking through some 1-star reviews of some of my favorite books, because I just wanted to do something kind of low-key because, you know, life's been busy and draining. And I haven't looked at any previously, so this really is, we really are going to be going on this journey together. And I've seen a lot of people do this and it looked like fun. And yes, I am already getting Christmassy in November, and you can deal with it. Alright, so I guess we'll just start with some of the books I've particularly talked about, so there won't be any surprises to anyone. Let's start with Bunny, I guess. Bunny by Mona Awad. Weird horror book. Talked about it a lot. I don't know whether it's necessarily one of my favorite books. Like, I feel like I need to reread it to be able to make that call. But at the same time, like, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since I read it mid-year, so. I don't know whether this is an unpopular opinion, but I actually really dislike reviews that are just filled with like reaction images and GIFs. Like, it just makes it so difficult for me to read the review, and so I kind of hate it. So but you know. Well, I didn't like it, and I think everyone was hitting the crack pipe. I'm weird and messed up enough without this. So I'm climbing out of the rabbit hole and onto the next book. Happy reading. You know what? Fair enough. It is a weird ass book, and it's definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea. What is this review? Deep, deep breath, lung bursting shrieks, choked swear words, another deep breath, then out. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get this shiz over with. Words cannot, and I mean cannot, express how disappointed I am with this novel. I went from wow, this is so creepy, I love it, to well, that was a little disappointing, to F this shiz so effing hard. All Samantha did for literally 3/4 of the book was whine, whine, whine about her life and how she hates people but can't tell them, and lies, lies, lies. You know, fair. It's definitely one of those books where I don't think any of the characters is likable. But in this type of story, I guess that didn't really bother me. Wow. That's just a big ranty review, but you know what? Fair. This is the thing, I can usually, even if I really enjoy something, I can usually see where other people, like, everything is so personal, and people's enjoyment of things is so personal that, like, I can usually see where people are coming from. So I don't know whether this is necessarily an interesting thing for me to do, because I'll just be like, you know what, that's fair, that's fair. Bunny is lazy, underwhelming, and so obsessed with itself that it turns the reader off at nearly every page. It's got all the elements of a parody gone awry. The protagonist is so stereotypical that she has no personality. I mean, it's definitely one of those books that has like an over-the-top writing style that's like, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know what I'm looking for, but I can see how the writing style would give that impression. You know how people just kind of start hating on something to hate on something? That's what some of these feel like. So I'm gonna stop. Let's go to, my comfort read, which, do I want to read 1-star reviews of a comfort read? Burn for Me by Alona Andrews, which is the first book in the Hidden Legacy series. I reread this year in my birthday month, because May, you know, was kind of still early lockdown, and I just wanted something that was going to make me feel a bit better. I really enjoy Burn for Me. Urban fantasy, with a little sprinkle of romance. Wow, I never had to leave 2 books incompletely read within a week before. New record, I guess. I was sure, having loved Magic Bites, that this was going to be a kick-ass urban fantasy new series with a strong main character and a splendidly developed magic world. But it was underwhelming, so underwhelmingly. Again, it's just frustrating to me when they don't really give reasons why. I've actually never read Magic Bites before, which I feel like I should, considering how much I enjoy this series. I don't like reviews where they don't explain why. I want to know why though. And also, rating something that you didn't actually finish always leaves a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. Cliché paranormal romance with nothing new to add to the genre. This is definitely the most disappointed I have ever been in any Alona Andrews novel. This was bland overall. I felt like I've read the characters and writing many times before, especially in this genre. Then we have our lovely love interest in all his alpha male psychopathic glory. See, this is the thing. Hidden Legacy does follow a lot of your kind of typical urban fantasy tropes, including it does have your kind of alpha male love interest, which I have been on many rants before about how much I hate that, and yet for some reason it doesn't bother me in this book. It bothers me a bit in later books in this series, but in this first book, it doesn't, and I can't really tell you why. But you know, I don't necessarily disagree entirely, like there is some of that, but I don't know. But I also think it's, I think one of the things that also makes me so intrigued by this series is that it's a bit different than other urban fantasy I've read, in that it doesn't have like supernatural creatures or anything like that. It's all based, the fantasy elements are all based around this magic that's in the world, where like, you know, way back in history, this serum was released that gave people powers, and they ended up, you know, destroying the serum because they didn't want it to, I can't remember exactly, they thought it was too powerful or something, but by that extent it was already, you know, some people had already taken it, and it turns out that the powers are passed on through generations. So now you're in this society where different people have different powers, and there's, you know, that also ties into like social power dynamics and things like that. But, and so I think the way all that's done is different than anything I've read, and so even when there are those kind of stereotypical beats, like the world in that way intrigues me. I don't know. I'll likely die without understanding how such a mediocre book has so many good reviews and such a high rating. What? If you think a book's just okay, one star seems pretty harsh. I can most definitely see why the book is so popular, because Mad Rogan is a great character, but other than that, Burn For Me is terrible. I love the characters in Burn For Me, and like the family is my favourite part. And the reason I've continued the series now, where I've started reading where we're not following the same characters in it anymore, we're following different people in the family, and so I'm not enjoying it as much, but like I'm still enjoying it because I've always loved the whole family of the main character. Like there's this big family, and it's great, and you know, each to their own. The hero kidnaps and tortures the heroine. I mean, you know what, you're not wrong, but also, like, context is important. Context is important. He tortures her and then they fall in love, or fall in lust, whatever. Again, context. 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 Oh, I'm gonna, yeah, okay. You know, those reviews make me a little bit sad, because it is a comfort read for me, but each to their own. Alright, let's look at my childhood favourite. Forest of Silence, I think, is the first book in Del Toro Quest children's fantasy series. That was my favourite as a child. Alright, see, this is the other thing is, because this is a children's book, I feel like some of the reviews on here might be from children, and they definitely sound like they might be, but regardless, this is the only book I've actually looked at some of the reviews for before, and some of them just amused me, to be honest. I recently read the Del Toro Quest. It was terrible and awful. This story doesn't draw you in at all because the story is terrible. It made me want to put down the book. The book got a little better at the end, but it makes you sad to maybe see someone die. In my opinion, the book was terrible. I would never want to read it again. Finally, I would give it a 2 out of 100 because it was just that bad. Okay. Read every one, and they were all the biggest excuses for books ever. Then there are a lot of exclamation marks. Totally boring! Exclamation marks. Stupid plot! Exclamation marks. Pathetic characters! Exclamation marks. Even more pathetic bad dudes! Many more exclamation marks. B-O-R-I-N-G. See, these are just funny to me. I suspect this was written in an afternoon and the author was drunk at the time. Colour by numbers fantasy. I remember hating this book with all of my soul. Oh boy, that's about it. Fine, it's fine. This thing, like that's my childhood favourite book. I don't know whether I would love it as much if I read it now as an adult. But you know, even seeing people insult it with like that nostalgic love I have for it, like, I don't really care, I just, they're freaking funny. Let's go for some other books that have actually been like big on BookTube. I know are pretty divisive. One of my favourite things I read last year, which was actually one of the first books I had read in a while, and so it was one of the books that really got me back into reading in a big way, so, you know, props to it for that, but that's Nevernight by J. Kristoff, which, yeah, I know a lot of people hate it, I know a lot of people love it. Let's see what the 1-star reviews are. I love a good fantasy with a smidge of humor and sarcasm and over-the-top writing and interesting characters. If I were to write a review in the style of this book, it would begin something like this. I turned these pieces of former tree, the midnight ink recounting a narrative, tumefied by metaphoric wanderings. It pained, oh readers, it pained. Persevere, I thought. Quitting now would be a mark of failure, like a baby bird that flutters its wings for the very first time, stretching them out with the promise, the hope of flight, only to return defeated to its nest. You know what? I know you're making a mockery of the writing style, but that to me is beautiful. Like, this is why this book appeals to me so much. Like, I loved the writing, loved it. I didn't finish it, judge away, oh readers, judge away, but I could not force myself through it. It was a nightmare. I was so freaking bored. That's a very long review and I'm not going to read it, but just that introductory paragraph alone, like, it just endears it to me more. I feel like so this is, again, like, a lot of people hate that type of writing style, and so this is a lot of the criticism I'm seeing here. Allow me to pay homage to the writing style of this book. Finished the book, I sighed, twisted my head, arched my back like a meowing kitten towards its mother, hungry, afraid, an innocent newcomer in this cruel, cold world. My head ached, an unbelievable pain like a knife to the head, hilt broken like a katana sword struck by a bullet in a fight between a samurai and a cowboy. I sat up. The chair let out a squeak, the noise of a newborn mouse. How can I describe the pain, the suffering, the eternal twilight of the endless night, the soul-sucking misery, the mind-numbing boredom, worse than any kind of liquid nitrogen, reaching 0 Kelvin, oh hapless imagery, oh destruction of the English language, how I beseech thee, book, to stop thus. Okay, I'm done, I hurt myself writing that. Again, please, give me more. Do you like descriptions? No, I mean, do you really like descriptions? Do you like overwrought metaphors and a criminal use of adjectives? If you do, then dang diddly, if this book isn't written just for you. Yep, thank you. Just for me. Most of the 1-star reviews are just people who hated the writing style, which is fair. If you didn't like it, you don't like that, you're not gonna like it. Like, also, there are so many people who are saying they DNF'd at 40%. Like, again, like, you can give your opinion on the book, but I don't know about giving a star rating for a book based on not having actually read it. It seems to be a common theme here. I feel a little weird about rating this book 1 star. At a glance, it's not a 1-star book. The world is built competently and the premise is brilliant, and I know well enough that J. Kristoff can dance his way through a story. He is, after all, half of the creative genius that created Illuminate, which I thought was just okay. But that's on not liking mixed media formats. But Jesus, guys, this book was boring. I mean, it was boring as F, and I know that you're not supposed to rate or shelve DNFs, but I'll do what I want. So this was another DNF. Again, though, see, this is the thing, is that, like, I was so intrigued by the world and the writing and the footnotes and all of that, that I didn't find the beginning boring, but I know if you're not really enjoying all of that, like, the first half of the book, the first 40% of the book or whatever is really slow. So all the people who DNF'd it there didn't get to, like, the real heart of the story of this book where it really picks up, which again, like, for me, everything else, I was so engaged with everything else anyway that I was never bored, but, like, I get it why people would find that boring and stop reading, but, like, yeah, you've missed the main chunk of the book, which, you know, is a fair criticism of the book. If you're bored up to 40% of the way through, middle-aged white men should just not write, and then there's a heart emoji. The other thing I really enjoyed, the thing I kept saying was my favorite book I read last year was Kings of the Wild. Not that I don't have criticisms of my own, just in terms of the fact, like, the one thing with Kings of the Wild, like, I have criticisms of the second book, but that's irrelevant. The one thing with Kings of the Wild was that some of the humor was a little bit, like, boy humor, as in, like, a child boy humor, and so that didn't really jive with me, just like some of the jokes and stuff, but otherwise I did love this book. See what the 1-star reviews of it are, because who doesn't love a fantasy that feels like a D&D campaign? Apparently these guys. DNF. What is with people rating books 1 stars when they've only read like 20% of a book? I love badass back from retirement stories, I love assembling a team stories, and I sure as hell love getting the team back of Badass's story. The blurb promised me all that and then some. The reviews further raised my interest and I committed to this tale of fantasy. It took me a while to realize I was reading a cartoon superhero book. Why you shouldn't read this book: 1, a band of hippies, 2, accidental heroes, 3, structural issues, 4, the very casual stake, 5, the dangling point of view, 6, unnecessary world building. Why you should read this book: you like cozy fantasy in the vein of Star Wars prequels and latest Pirates of the Caribbean films. You know what? I am in that group of people who doesn't hate the Star Wars prequels. I hate to tell you, so... Honestly, the criticisms here are mostly on the humour or just being bored with the story, which, again, it's like a completely... That's something that's completely personal and so, like, completely fair, really. I'm a fan of the genre, but it was a bore. Went up to about halfway through before realising it will not get better, and there were too many tie-ins from popular culture, especially D&D and other RPG games. See, I loved that though. I loved all the tie-ins. Give me that geeky satisfaction. I'm trying to think, is there one more book we could look at? I can't even think now. What's another book that I would consider a favourite? For our last one, I guess let's go for one of my favourite classics, because Animal Farm. I'm still not over Animal Farm. I read that book years ago and it's still, sometimes I still think about it, just how hard done by some of the characters were. Rip. Here's the thing though, the thing about something like Animal Farm is it's a very political book because it's using animals to portray kind of real people and situations in a way, comparing them to, you know, things that actually happened, because Orwell's work was very political if you've ever read 1984. So that could be concerning for some of the reviews. I'm really not here to get political right now. I just wanted to read some reviews of reviews of books that I like. The story was not enjoyable for the author's lazy writing, made the book rather lackluster, and the fairy tale aspect only deducted from my joy of reading it. I love fairy tales. Who doesn't like fairy tales? Someone rated it 1 star and just said, please don't kill me. It's okay. I'm pretty sure I gave 1984 2 stars, so we can rate classics low, it's fine. I didn't like it at all. It was so boring. This one just says, die! And then you've also got a bunch of reviews by clearly like teenagers who had to read it in school, and so it's just like, I hate this, which, you know, fair. I mean, I love reading, but I think there were only 2 books I ever read in school that I actually enjoyed at the time. It was horrible, the worst book in the entire world. Never read this. I understand the allegory, but it was too simplistic and dragged on and on. It lost my attention after the first page. Worst book I ever read. Yeah, it's an interesting allegory and whatnot, but an awful book on its own. Horrible. It's a classic, but didn't like it at all. I don't know why I find these like short reviews of people hating books so funny, but oh, even better, big stink and big gross. The 3 type of negative reviews there really are. People getting like really into the politics of it and saying how like it's inaccurate and a bad view of things. You've got just kids saying I had to read this for school and I hated it, and then you've just got like your reviews that are like 1 sentence or even 1 phrase of just saying something bad about it, which is just funny to me. People saying it was just boring, which, you know what, fair. Why did I do this? Why did I do this? I don't know whether any of that will be interesting at all to anyone but me, who was just laughing over people hate reviewing books. If nothing else, now you know some of my favourite books, I guess. Have you read any of these books? What do you think about them? What are some of your favourite books? Have you ever read a 1-star review of one of your favourites, and how did it make you feel? Yeah, let's chat in the comments as usual, and stay safe and starzy out.